And as set forth in the report after that investigation, if we had had confidence that the president clearly did not commit a crime, we would have said so. We did not, however, make a determination as to whether the president did commit a crime.
Wait a minute. You found no evidence a crime was committed, and yet you can't say that he didn't commit a crime? Unbelievable. But you know what? I have evidence that somebody committed the crime of obstruction of justice. And you know who that person is, Mr. Mueller? Do you have any idea? It was you! You, Robert Mueller! I have video evidence that you committed the crime of obstruction of justice. And we're going to see it right now when you give your disingenuously pretend stupid answers to Congressman Jim Jordan. It's in 2013 when they're investigating the IRS scandal, which is like a big scandal back then with the Tea Party. The IRS, when they investigating how the IRS denied tax exemptions to the Tea Party groups. So let's take a look at Robert Mueller committing obstruction of justice by pretending to act stupid.
Based on everything I've seen, quoting Mr. Cummings, the case is solved. This is regarding the IRS scandal.
Which case?
The IRS scandal.
The IRS case?
Yeah.
Yeah, the IRS case, which was only the biggest scandal of 2013, Robert Mueller.
Yeah.
You know, the IRS case is currently under investigation, and basically it's just started.
Yeah. What can you tell us? I mean, you started a month ago. What can you tell us about this? Have you found Have you found the now infamous 2 rogue agents? Have you discovered who those people are?
Needless to say, because it's under investigation, I can't give out any.
Can you tell me some basics? Can you tell me how many agents, investigators you've assigned to the case?
May be able to do that, but I'd have to get back to you.
Can you tell me who the lead investigator is?
Off the top of my head, no.
This is the most important issue in front of the country the last 6 weeks. You don't know who's heading up the case? Who the lead investigator is?
At this juncture, no, I do not know who the.
Can you get that information to us? We'd like to know. We'd like to know how many people you've assigned to look into this situation.
I have not had a recent briefing on it. I had a briefing on it when we first initiated it, but I have not had a recent briefing as to where we are.
So you don't know who's leading the case?
I do not know who is the lead agent.
Do you know?
I'm only the FBI director, so how would I know who the lead investigator is or how many agents?
Do you know if you've talked to any of the victims? Have you talked to any of the groups who were targeted by their government? Have you met with any of the Tea Party folks since May 14th, 2013?
I don't know what the status of the interviews are by the team that's on it.
Would you expect that that's been done?
Certainly at some point in time, and of course the investigation will be done, but generally at the outset of the investigation you get the documents so that you can have a real...
But don't you normally talk to the victims?
I do not know specifically what is happening.
In your extensive record and history and investigative work, don't you typically talk to the victim? It's a criminal investigation. Don't you typically talk to the victims pretty soon?
I'm sure it will happen.
So did the FBI contact any of these same victims? Were they contacted by the FBI prior to the investigation when these same groups were applying for tax-exempt status? Did the FBI pay some of these individuals a visit?
I do not know.
Pardon?
I do not know.
You don't know?
I do not know.
I do not know. I do not know. I'm only the FBI director. I do not know.
Some of them testified that they were paid a visit by the FBI. Specifically, Catherine Engelbrecht in Texas said she was visited by the FBI. She was head of True the Vote. Is that true or not?
Do not know.
You do not know. Okay.
And I do not know why you haven't done a damn bit of investigating on this IRS scandal.
Okay. If the FBI did contact people involved in the IRS scandal, victims groups, prior to the investigation when they were applying for tax-exempt status, why was that the case? Why would you be looking into it? And was there possibly coordination with the IRS in why you targeted them?
You're asking me details about the investigation. I'd be happy to get back.
I'm not asking you details about the investigation. I'm saying why were people targeted before the investigation started? Yeah. Why were they contacted by the FBI? Yeah. People who are now part of Tea Party groups who were targeted by the IRS.
You're asking questions about details of the investigation. I'd be happy to take
That is not a detail about the investigation. That took place prior to the investigation started.
May I please finish? You're asking detailed questions about the investigation. I'd be happy to get back to you and answer those questions that I can, understanding.
I'm asking basic questions about the investigation, like who's heading it up, and you can't tell me that. Can you get back to me on any group who was targeted by the IRS, who the FBI visited with prior to the investigation starting, while they were applying for tax? That would be important information for this committee to have. Can you get that to me?
We'll look at the questions and try to respond.
Have you?
I will be happy to get back to you so that I could tell you that I do not know.
And try to respond.
Have you reviewed the Inspector General's report regarding the IRS scandal?
I have been through it, yes.
Do you have any concerns about the way the Inspector General did the report and collected information?
I did not focus on that at all. I was looking.
Well, let me ask you a couple of things. Is it typically appropriate for the investigator to have one of the central players in this, Ms. Holly Paz, who was director of one of the key players at the tax-exempt division, set in on all the interviews, almost all the interviews with employees in that division? Is that typically how an investigation is done?
I'm not familiar with those circumstances. I understand what you're saying about those circumstances, so not being familiar with it, I can't.
In your time as an investigator, is that how you would do interviews with the boss sitting next to the person you're trying to get information from?
Well, again,
Is it appropriate for Holly, the Inspector General came out in a transcribed interview that our staff has done, the Oversight Committee staff has done, is it appropriate to have her collect the data and give it to the Inspector General?
I am not familiar with the...
If that happened, is that appropriate?
I am not familiar with this obvious obstruction of justice by having a high IRS official sit in with interviews with the IRS employees.
You've had a month now to investigate this. This has been the biggest story in the country, and you can't even tell me who the lead investigator is? You can't tell me that actions the Inspector General took, which are not typically how investigations are done, you can't tell me if that's appropriate or not? This is not speculation. This is what happened, and you can't tell me how many agents are assigned to the most important news story, maybe the most important...
Time of the gentleman has expired.
No, Congressman Jordan, he cannot tell you anything because he is oh so obviously obstructing justice.
Subscribe to the Dummy Funnies now!